Plus, breaking news from the prosecutor's office on Chris Lane's murder as Rush Limbaugh yesterday pointed to coverage of the Chris Lane murder case and said it was a classic example of how the mainstream media is helping to destroy American culture. Today, we'll show you what has him so angry.
There has been more outrage in the mainstream media, more attention paid in the mainstream media to that stupid clown story at the Missouri State Fair than there has been to this wanton murder in Oklahoma.
And this is a Fox News alert. New developments on the Chris Lane murder just moments ago. He was a respected college athlete fatally shot while out for a jog. The suspects, teenagers who reportedly told police they did it because they were bored. Well, Fox News just spoke with District Attorney Jason Hicks, the prosecutor handling this case, about the charges against the three teens. We earlier showed you that one of the suspects, James Edwards, had what appeared to be racist messages on his Twitter feed saying he hated white people, calling them nasty. When we asked the prosecutor about the tweet, he said he's not going to focus on the shooting as being anything like a hate crime, saying he wants to focus solely on the murder charges. And that comes as the larger debate plays out over how the mainstream media is covering the issue of race in this case, seeming for the most part to shy away from identifying the fact that two of the accused killers were black and the victim white. Here's what Rush Limbaugh had to say just yesterday.
This is Trayvon Martin in reverse, only worse. This was nowhere near self-defense. I mean, this is just cold-blooded, first-degree, recreational, for the fun of it because they were bored murder. And you have, what is it, two black guys and a white guy in the group? No matter where you look in the media, it's not a racial event. Nothing about this is the epitome of media irresponsibility. This is a classic illustration of just what role the mainstream media is playing in the destruction of American culture and society. There has been more outrage in the mainstream media, more attention paid in the mainstream media to that stupid clown story at the Missouri State Fair than there has been to this wanton murder in Oklahoma.
What do you at home think? Let's talk about it with Monica Crowley, a Fox News contributor and radio host, and Bernard Whitman, a former pollster for President Bill Clinton and a Democratic strategist. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Steve.
And, you know, as passionate and as upset as Rush seemed there, he got a lot of heat for what he said yesterday. There were, media outlets out there that lean probably more to the left that said conservatives were dragging this case into race territory and it didn't belong there. Monica?
Well, we're still waiting for this investigation to unfold, and we're still waiting for a lot of details to emerge about this. We don't know whether or not these three teenagers acted out of racial animus. We don't know whether there was a racial element here. There may have been, there may not have been, but I think the facts need to be sorted out by the police and the investigators before we make any judgment on that. But when it comes to media coverage, that's a different issue. Media in this case really has been very, very limited in terms of the coverage, and the coverage that the mainstream media has given to the case, Shannon, has been very circumspect in terms of identifying the suspects, identifying these three thugs and their race. They have seemed to go to great lengths to conceal the racial identities of these three. Two are black, one of the suspects is white. You really have to dig into the stories, whether it's on Fox, we're covering it, but very few other outlets really are. When they do cover it, you have to dig to find other elements. For example, the anti-white racist tweet that is attributed allegedly to one of these suspects, or the fact that one of these suspects posed with a rifle on social media, or the fact that one of them is loosely associated with the Crips gang. You really have to delve deeply into the very few media outlets even covering this story to get those details and flesh it out. You know that if the roles had been reversed and you had three white kids killing a black man, that you would know those details pretty fast.
Bernard, do you think that's true?
No, I don't actually think that that's necessarily true. And I think what the story underscores is the scourge that gun violence and gang violence plays in this country. That is the real story here. This is a terrible act of violence against an innocent kid. And, we have teens who are 15, 16, 17 years old having access to to guns.
And we don't know where they got them.
And this comes after multiple tragedies and underscores the need for the Congress to actually act here. I mean, the president has done what he can.
Yeah, we have a lot of gun laws that aren't being enforced, and so we don't know what laws they may have broken to get those guns.
It underscores the fact that we need to pass background checks. We need to crack down on illegal guns.
Do you think any of these kids would have gone to get a background check? Any of these kids?
We need to make gun trafficking a federal crime. But here, Shannon, you know what the untold story of this is? The untold story of this is the guy who turned in these kids, James Johnson, the reason why he turned them in is because his son was recruited by these individuals to join a gang. The son bravely refused. Came back, told his father, the kids showed up at his house, the father called the police, and that's why they were arrested. So we ought to be telling a story here about gang violence and gun violence. The fact that 2 were black and 1 were white, is interesting, but it's not the point of the story.
Those are certainly factors and conversations that we definitely need to have as we learn more about the case. I mean, certainly if this dad, what he's saying is true, that this was part of a gang initiation, in his opinion, that is, we need to discuss all of that. But do we whitewash the rest of the story? Would the media treat this the same way, as Monica said? I mean, can you include some facts and not, can you pick and choose which facts you're going to include, which some may be uncomfortable for some people, and some of the media may be afraid of getting burned if they bring up the issue of race.
This shows, though, the bias and the incredible power of the media to set a narrative. So in many cases, you've got the media creating a racial narrative. The Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman case, the FBI, even Trayvon Martin's own parents and lawyers said there was no racial animus that drove into that shooting. The media, largely helped by the race hustlers and so on, created a racial narrative where there wasn't one. In this case, I think perhaps those facts about the race of the gunmen is racially inconvenient, and so to a political agenda, so the media doesn't want to report them. And to go off on a gun agenda here is totally inappropriate, Bernard. You're doing a transfer of responsibility away from the perpetrators and their personal criminal behavior to some broad social issue, in this case, guns. This has nothing to do with the weapon.
They would not have been able to kill him if they did not have access to guns. Guns are, in fact, very much the problem.
If they broke laws that are already on the books and that aren't being appropriately enforced, there's no reason to pass additional laws for the same exact issue.
Well, one of the executive orders that Obama instituted was making sure that information could actually go from the states to the Federal Registry. So we have to actually allow better access to information. We have to understand the causes of gun violence. These are all things that can help limit and prevent these situations. And frankly, I think the media, though, had a problem because 2 were black, 1 were white. That's a difficult story to tell.
This is not about the gun. 2 days before, these 3 criminal suspects had put down on social media that they intended to kill 2 people within 2 hours. It doesn't matter if they had a gun. They could have run over Chris Lane with their car. They could have beaten him to death. It's not about the weapon, so stop trying to deflect into a gun.
The weapon, he would not have been shot dead if he didn't have access to a gun.
But I'm pretty sure that these 3 wouldn't have shown up and asked for a background check in order to get their hands on a gun.
We don't know. Gun trafficking should be a federal crime and allow the federal authorities to crack down on illegal gun trafficking.
It'll be interesting to find out where they got the gun. Clearly, that's an issue that needs to be addressed. As there have been calls, the FBI has already investigated the race issue with the Zimmerman Trayvon case, and now the DOJ is doing the same after there's already been one investigation. That is certainly in their purview. Do you think there will be any calls for anybody to put pressure on the DOJ to see and investigate if this was about race?
I think if the facts in the case merit that, there absolutely should be, and ultimately I think it's going to be.
Called for the DOJ investigation in the Trayvon Martin case, call for an investigation.
It's going to be depending on what the facts of the case are. I think, given the fact that 2 of the alleged shooters were black and 1 was white, is going to complicate that because the narrative isn't quite as clearly racially motivated, and it makes it a little bit uncertain as to what the motives are. But I think, as Monica said, we're at the beginning of examining the facts in the case. If the facts bear out that there was a racial element even amongst 1 of the shooters, then yes, that should be investigated.
Do you think we'll get those calls?
I agree. I don't think necessarily that that's going to happen with the DOJ. Maybe, possibly, we'll see. But it would be nice to see the so-called civil rights leaders in this country speak out. I see Jesse Jackson did give a very strong statement after a relatively weak tweet, but I was heartened to see that he gave a stronger statement after that. I'd like to see from Al Sharpton some words here as well.
And we will share those. If we
get
them,
I'd like
Monica?
to see some action against guns.
Enforcement of laws would be a good place to start. Bernard, thank you very much. Monica, thank you very much.
Shannon, you bet.